but we can start with a line going down. And then a smaller line kind of curving to make a cross. And this is just gonna help us map out the face. I usually start by doing my chin line down here. Which the chin is pretty small and narrow. And then from there I start to draw the more defined jawline. And then, so far we have this like kind of oblong V shape. I'm gonna bring that up to meet that center line. To make it a little taller. And this line goes closer to a straight line than this V right down here. So I have kind of like the chin marks here, and then the middle of the face is a different angle. And then to connect that all, I just draw the top of the head. And as I go, I'm gonna start to erase some of these lines because we won't need them all. All right, so now I'm gonna go in and do the lips. So the lips start kind of similar as the chin did, with just a small curve. And then I make the little marks for where I want the outside of my lips to go. And this always changes for me depending on the expression I'm making. And then to help with the top two lips, I usually do 2 circles like this. And of course, the smaller the circles, the smaller the pout's gonna be, and vice versa. So I just pretty much created 3 circles on top of each other. And the largest circle is the bottom lip, and that's gonna be larger than the top circles in most cases. And then I kind of like to do like a little bit of an open smile, but not too much. So that's what this little gap is right there. And I kind of find it just adds a little bit of interest. It depends on the expression you're making, of course. And then from there, I do my tiny little nose, which is very tiny usually. It's just a little, that same shape I've been doing over and over, that little V shape. And then this center line is where I'm gonna put my eyes. And the eye placement, typically, I don't really have a specific rule for it, but typically I'm putting it halfway between the center line and the side of her face. But again, this can change. And to make my eyes, and I got a lot of comments that people didn't know how to draw eyes, and there's really no rule in any type of art, but my eyes typically tend to be almond shaped. It's just the way I've been drawing them for a while. So I start with this kind of winged eyeliner shape on both sides. And don't worry if you messed it up, because right now we're still in pencil, so you can erase as much as you need to. And if you're having trouble getting the eyes to match, a tip I would have would be to, let me move my markers back here, flip your drawing upside down and draw these just as shapes and don't think about it as eyes. So when it's upside down, your brain is kind of tricked into not seeing a face so much, and you just see the shape of it. So that's a helpful tool if you're just getting into that. And mine are even a little bit uneven, and that's okay. No one has a perfect face, And these aren't perfect either. All right, so I'm not gonna do anything about the bottom line yet, and I usually put in my eyebrows here. So my eyebrows start at the first corner, the inner corner of the eye. And right away, I just kind of made this rectangular shape. And again, the eyebrows are huge indicators of the expression. So if you want her to have like a sassy look, you might do a super arched eyebrow, which is what I usually do. If you want something surprised, they're gonna be pointed more up this way. But I guess I would define my signature eyebrow style, if I have one, as being this kind of flirty, arched brow. And then from there I kind of go in and I make the little stroke marks. This is how I do my actual eyebrows too. A lot of the portrait drawing I do is very similar to how I apply my makeup. I like having like the wispy brows. And like I said, we can start to erase marks that we know we don't need. So I know I'm done with the center line, I can start to erase that. And you can still see it a little bit. So that's good as we go forward. And then I give her a little bit of an eyelid here. So it's super small and it just mimics the shape of the eye we did. And then from here, I'm gonna start to erase this. And I never really draw a lower eye. I just make a lash line. And we'll give her some lashes on the top. This is my favorite part. Keeping in mind on the lashes, from the center of the eye over, they typically are gonna curve out. And then once you hit the center line, they curve inward. So same on this side, I'm gonna go out. And then as it gets closer to her nose, I'm gonna start to curve in. And she obviously needs some eyeballs now. So I'm gonna draw the eyeball. And I think another mistake that people make frequently is drawing or having the eyeball be too visible. So if you draw the full circle, I'm not gonna do it in here because I don't wanna mess up the drawing, but if you do the full circle, her eyes are gonna look really surprised. So I like to hide some of that circle both behind the lower lid here, but also above the upper lid. So we can kind of pull this down a little bit to make her look less surprised. So as you can see, I'm not doing the full circle there. Right, so we have most of the face drawn. I'm just gonna give her a little bit of a neck. And then I'm not drawing a full body, but I will give her a slight indication of her collarbones and shoulders. All right. Pulled that down a little bit too much. All right, so now for the hair. Her whole head is drawn on here, but her hair is gonna actually come a few inches below this scalp. And for this drawing, I think I'm gonna give her a center part with her hair down. So I kind of start from the middle, where the hair is rooted, and then I pull it down. And the hair is really fun because you can really do whatever you want with it. So I'm gonna have her hair kind of falling behind her shoulders on this side, and then on her right side, your left, I'm gonna kind of have her hair coming more forward. Tweaking as I go and erasing as I go, so we can get rid of her hair, or the top of her head, because you're not going to see that. It's going to be hidden by her hairline. I'm actually going to pull her hairline down a little bit as well. All right, so now I can get into the coloring of it. I'm gonna have her be, I think I'm gonna do, I'll do blonde for this one because it involves the most colors and you'll really be able to see how I use negative space to create highlights. And I'm also gonna give her a fair skin. So I'm gonna use E00, which used to be called Skin White and now it's called, I don't know what the new name of it is. Hopefully someone can comment and let me know because all of my markers are old, so it's the old color still. But the color code is still E00. And usually for the skin, I use this Copic Classic marker, which is the square chisel shaped one because it covers the most area space. But I always start with the eyelids. I don't know why. There's really no rhyme or reason to it, but that's just how I've always started. And then I kind of do her cheekbones. And then I follow through with the rest of her face. We're gonna do a lot of layers of this to create some depth and use the same color as a shadow tool. So that's the first layer. Now I'm gonna go into the second layer. As you can see, I'm using it to create shadows and contour. So I still haven't switched colors. This is all using E00. But we are gonna switch colors soon. So So now that I'm done with that, I'm gonna use my second color, which is E11. It's called Barley Beige. It's one of my favorite colors. I use it frequently. And same, I'm gonna go in with that second shadow color over the eyelids. I'm not giving this girl any eyeshadow, but if you wanted to, you could also do like a very light color to give her some eyeshadow. And I'm applying this a bit more sparingly than the first shadow layer because it is a bit darker. And you can put the shadows wherever you want to. Just think about where your light source is coming from. And other than like her cheekbones are an anatomical feature, so those are gonna be just left and right. But as far as like down here, I'm thinking that the sun or the light source is from up here. So the shadows are gonna be all to the left. So we have the skin done. I'm gonna move on to the hair. And for blonde hair, I kind of play around with my colors, but typically I'm using E51, which is milky white, for the first layer. So I'm just gonna start to apply it. Probably should have erased some of these lines. So the lighter colors, even though the pencil I used is a pretty hard line, making the strokes pretty light, it can get a little bit muddy. So it's helpful to erase as many lines as you don't need. So using that first color, I'm gonna start to sketch this out. And right about here, I'm gonna leave this section white because it will make her hair look shiny in the end. So see, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but right here, this is just gonna stay white. So I'm using that like negative space. And I'll do it in certain other parts too. Like right here, I'm gonna leave this little space right there white. And then I'll leave a little piece right there white. So that'll just make her hair look a little shiny. I'm gonna do the same right up here. So leaving that white. And then right here, I'll leave it white there too. However, the closer you get to her neck, the darker the shadow should be. So I'm gonna start to layer this up, getting a little heavier in my hand when I apply it. So the closer to the neck and the closer to the scalp line, so up here where her roots are, it's gonna be a bit darker than around here. But just starting to go in with the second layer, adding another value of color. So far we're only using one color. So we just created that depth with just that color. Now you can go in with the second color. I'm gonna use E53 Raw Silk at the root. And I'm being careful to keep that little area white that I left white intentionally. And I'm using the chisel end right now, but you can use whatever end you want. I'm probably gonna switch to the brush side now. And these techniques that I'm using, you can do them with any hair color. This is just blonde, for example. And I know I talk about this a lot, but I do like to take some strokes kind of outside the color, outside the lines, especially with hair like this, because it makes it look like it's being caught in the wind. This is a super beachy look. And I'm gonna go in again with a third color. This one's E43 Dull Ivory. I'm gonna go in with this where close to her neckline is. And do some at the root. Near the bottom. All right, so we have the actual hair color, which is nice. I do want to give her a lip. I think I'll do red for this one, so I'm going to use R29, which is called Lipstick Red, so it's very appropriate. Just going to start to color in those lips, using the circles we made as a guide. And then I forgot to talk about her eyebrows too, but her eyebrows are probably going to be the darkest shade of the hair color I use. So in this case, it's going to be that E43. And we will define them shortly with our liner pens. So this is just the base color. And then her eyes can obviously be any color you want them to be. I don't draw the center of the eye, I just do the color. I think it's just a stylistic thing for me. I prefer the look that way. And then since the first layer of her lip dried, I'm gonna do a second layer, but only on the top. If you look at someone's lips, their top lip tends to be darker than the bottom. So just a slight shadow there. All right, so now's the fun part. This is when you go in with the multi-liners and do the outlining. I'm gonna use a combination of micron pens and Copic marker multi-liners, but I always start with a thin one, and I start with the eyes, and it's gonna be 0.03. I'm gonna start with her eyes. Just giving some definition. For me, this is the step that really brings the drawing to life. I have a lot of fun with this step. I think the eyes in any drawing is where you can start to really develop your own personal style. And I know I get comments a lot, and even just talking to some fellow artists and artist friends, that they find the struggle to develop a signature style quite difficult. And I went through the same thing, but it just takes time and drawing all the time and drawing the same thing kind of repeatedly and seeing or finding trends that you're doing. So for me, I've always drawn my eyes the same way, and I think that's how I found a style that I could identify with, and one that I hope people, when they see, can identify it with me as well. And when I draw with these multi-liners, I'm kind of varying my line weight. So I'm not doing all thin strokes, I'm doing a combination of both. So going into her eyebrows, I'm going to keep the strokes a little bit messy because I like that look. But that's totally up to you. When you're drawing her lips, you don't want to you're not going to outline every single part of the lip, but I like to do the outside corners, and that's where you start to see her smile kind of come to life. And then I always do right underneath the lip. I create a bit of a shadow here with a few back and forth applications of that. And then even some squiggly lines here where the lips are. The area I'm going to avoid doing though is this top lip. So we're going to leave that alone for now. For the outline of her face, I'm going to switch to a slightly thicker multi-liner, and I'm going to use 0.05. And again, I'm kind of doing these strokey, sketchy marks. And I'm varying my line weight. We don't have to do too much of the left side of her face because it is covered by this piece of hair that's coming down. And if you want to kind of give her a very chiseled look, you can draw out that jawline, or her cheekbones rather. Maybe add some mascara. Could do a cat eye. I know I'm all over the place right now, but I always see stuff as I'm drawing that I know I want to add to. So just a quick little cat eye. All right. Now we're going to go into the hair. And again, I always start from the root. And when I'm doing the lining of the hair, I keep it very thin, very strokey, because that's what hair is. It's very small, and you can't really see a ton of the details of it, but up here where the roots are, you really can see the details. So you don't have to draw out every single line, but up here you do want to have some lines where it meets the root. Keep this part loose though. The hair's super flowy, so you can afford to kind of let your hand go here. so now that I have it done with a thin line, I'm gonna go in with a thicker line using, let's see what this one looks like. It's too thick. The 0.1, just in selected areas, I'm gonna do a thicker line. Not too much. And then the one last thing I'm gonna do to her hair, if I can find it, is I'd like to use a colored pencil to kind of deepen the dark values in her hair. It's important to do this step after you've done the application of any marker or any liners you're gonna do, because the wax and the pencil will act as a resist against the ink of the pen. So you wanna do the pencil over the pen. I'm gonna add a little bit more color to her eye. I do leave some of the eye white to give a bit of a reflection. And this is the point in the drawing where I look and see if I want to change anything, add anything. And I think we can get away with adding a little bit more color to the top of her eye. And maybe some contrast down here. I might even go in with the color I use frequently as a shadow color, which is E70. Just add a little bit. This one's dead. Let's see what this one is. There we go. I love this color. It's called Ash Rose. It's a great shadow color. So that's about it for my drawing of the fashion face. This is a lot more detailed than a face on one of my full body sketches would be, and that's just because there's more surface area to cover and you can get a little bit more detailed. But the style of face is the same. I always kind of have a narrow chin, like a heart-shaped face, almond-shaped eyes. That's kind of just the style I've developed, but play around with trying out your own style and see what you like and identify with, and that's kind of how you progress. Don't be afraid of making mistakes either. That's what more paper's for, and that's what erasers are for. So just have fun with it. Always sign your work though, so I'm going to sign it down here. And I like to date it so I know when I draw it. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. If you're seeing this on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing to my channel. It's H. Nichols Illustration if you search for it. And if you're watching it on Instagram, I hope you have been enjoying these IGTVs. All right, have a great day, guys.